and welcome to the third edition of Ask Ron, back by popular demand as far as you know. I'm trying to make these a little shorter. Before I even start, I want to put my opinion of the whole Dallas situation. It's a tragedy. He was only 3 years older than my oldest child, so to me he was a kid, had his whole life in front of him. It's not even that important as far as I'm concerned how or why he died. All that matters is he's gone. He's not coming back. His life was taken away much too soon, and that's a terrible thing. And my heart goes out to his parents, everyone that's related to him, everyone that knew him, everyone that loved him. They lost someone that was a very important part of their lives, and all of us have lost people. It's hard. So I didn't want to start on a downer, but I wanted to say, I feel for everyone that knew Dallas. It's a tragedy, and I feel terrible that the kid's gone. He had so much living ahead of him, and all of us need to appreciate every day, because you never know. You never know when it's going to be your last day. Could be someone you love, their last day. You just never know. Not one day is guaranteed. So I'm going to get into some questions. Most of these were submitted by Old School 90. Who's the most impressive pro you have ever seen? In person, up close, I'm going to say probably Vic Richards. And Vic Richards was only a pro sort of because Joe Weider wanted him to become a pro, and they sent him off to Nigeria to beat a couple skinny Nigerian guys just so he could have a pro card. That was back in the early 90s, I believe. But Victor up close, he was ahead of his time. This is a guy that I didn't see him until the early 90s when I got out to LA, but I'd seen him in the magazines. And long before we had someone as big as a Ronnie or a Nasser, he was a big dude. He was probably about 5'9", went about 285, pretty lean. Back wasn't the greatest, but man, chest, shoulders, arms, legs, he was just massive. He had like legit 23-inch arms. He trained at a gym I trained at for a while in Pasadena, and he would ask me to spot him sometimes. And he was upset that our dumbbells only went to 150, because he would sit there on the incline dumbbell press, and the 150s were like 50s are to me. He was just boop boop boop. He'd do like 15 reps and just sort of slam him down, disgusted that that's all we had. Eventually he left. He must have found a gym with bigger dumbbells. But Victor was pretty damn massive. On stage, the most impressive pro, I'd have to say Ronnie in his prime. Ronnie around 03, 04, when he was 280, 290, in that range. He was just ridiculously big and full. He was enormous. When he walked out, the show was over. Those Olympias were over. Best show you've ever been to? I'm probably going to have to say the 1991 Olympia, which was the first Olympia I ever went to. It might be nostalgia. It might be just looking back at it. Everything seems so much better when you look back and years later at it. But it was a pretty damn great show. It was Lee Haney's last show. He won his 8th Mr. Olympia there in a row. Made his retirement speech on stage at 31 years old. Dorian Yates, that was his first Olympia appearance. He was second place. Very solid second place. And everyone that was there knew that Dorian was going to be probably his successor, and sure enough he was. But that was a great show. You still had a lot of the 80s stars in it. Vince Taylor, Rich Gaspari, Lula Brada, Barry DeMay. It was just a hell of a lineup, and it was at the Walt Disney World Dolphin Hotel, so it was a nice setting. Really cool show. But again, I'm looking back from remembering it as a 21-year-old, starstruck, seeing all these guys, a lot of them for the very first time in real life. So, but to me, there was never going to be another Olympia that was that special. Probably because it was my first. Best after party, okay. Best after party, I can't specifically recall the year. I want to say it was 02, 03, 04. It was one of those. And I believe the show was still called Night of Champions. It wasn't New York Pro yet. And Craig Titus and Kelly Ryan, they promoted an after party at the China Club. Their after party wasn't that great, but everybody left that China Club and went to the Sound Factory a few blocks away, and that was the greatest after party I've ever been to, by far. So the reason was because pretty much everybody, a lot of people were from the show. It was tons and tons of local bodybuilders, fitness girls. Everybody was under the influence of something, ecstasy, GHB, whatever. So all the guys had their shirts off. Everybody, the girls were touchy-feely. Everybody was feeling each other. Mostly girls feeling guys and guys feeling girls. It was a great time. Greg Valentino was there. Greg was drinking a Diet Coke, I believe. He was not on any drugs, but he was watching the festivities. But yeah, it was a great time. Craig and Kelly put some great shows on. And someone had asked, what was the beef between me and Craig Titus? I've talked about it in the forums before, but I'll address it here. So when I worked for the American Sports Network, there was no internet yet. So we had a gossip line called 1-900-PUMP-IRON. And you could call that, there was a line you could call for all kinds of things, contest schedules, but a lot of people called it for this Muscle Beach News thing, which was just our weekly gossip column where we had a guy a radio guy he would read the news in a recording studio. Anyway, one of the news items was that Craig Titus had been arrested for selling ecstasy through the mail across state lines, and he was going to prison, which was 100% true. And it was a matter of police record if anyone had cared to look. But Craig found out that we reported on this, called the office, and I was lucky enough to pick up the phone. And Craig said, unless we got that off the gossip line, unless we took that recording off, he would be down to our office the very next day with a baseball bat. And the exact quote was, "Use your imagination." So I assume he intended to beat us all to death, particularly me, because I'm the one that he assumed had written it. And I did, but I didn't gather the information. So yeah, he threatened to beat me with a baseball bat. Then a couple years later, he called me because, a few years later, he called me because there was a story in a T Nation, or I think it was called still called Testosterone at the time, which was basically descended from Muscle Media 2000. And it was one of the Deadpool series of articles, which I may or may not have been the author of. And he was very upset that it was easy to tell he was one of the people that it was predicted could be in this Deadpool because of his excessive drug use, both performance enhancing and recreational. And Craig's still alive, so that Deadpool was wrong. But yeah, he was not happy, and he wasn't sure I had written it, so he couldn't really threaten me too badly. But that was another time he threatened me. For the most part, we were cool. He got excessively angry at me one more time that I recall, and that was because of an MD article I wrote where I talked about an after party he threw after the Olympia at the House of Blues in Las Vegas, inside Mandalay Bay, where there was lots of drugs going on, and I insinuated that a girl had been sexually molested on the dance floor, which is 100% true. I knew it from a very reputable person had just told me it happened. I mean, it happened, and things happen in clubs when people are on drugs, whether they're bodybuilders or not. And anyway, he was very upset that I had reported on the dark side of his parties, the drug use and things that went on. And I said someone was having sex on the dance floor, which they were. I actually witnessed it. So whatever, it was all true. He just didn't like the fact that I was putting it out there. So these are some of the things. There might even be more reasons I can't think of where Craig hated me. Least impressive top pro you've seen. Well, if you're a top pro, you're impressive. So that's kind of a weird way to put it. Least impressive pro I have seen. Let's not use the very modern era as an example, because there's some people lately have been turning pro, especially the first year that there was Classic, and especially if you go to some of the master shows, some people have lucked out and hit really weak classes where they were like the only one in shape at the time, and they don't have what I would consider a pro caliber physique, but they have a pro card. There's also been, I recall before there was a 202 or 212 class, you would occasionally see someone who had turned pro as a bantamweight, a lightweight, or a middleweight, one of the lighter weight classes. They would enter an open show, because that's all there was. There was no lighter weight division. They would enter and they would try to be all bulked up to try to hang size-wise with the bigger guys. And usually they were way out of shape. A lot of times they had destroyed their lines. Their guts were now huge. They'd put on like a good amount of mass, but they didn't have the frame to carry it, so it wasn't a good look for them, you know. But that was the only option they had, and typically that might be the only time you saw them. They would do that one show and realize this is not working, and you'd never see them again. And there have also been some guys from, I guess, Europe or somewhere that I've seen enter shows way out of shape, and I don't know if it was because they didn't realize how tough the competition was going to be, even at a show like the New York Pro or the Tampa Pro or whatever. But I've seen some guys at these shows that were just way out of shape, and that wasn't very impressive. All right, let's get into a fun one. If you could have dinner with 5 people, who would those people be? Can be a dead person too. Well, good, I'm glad. Number 1, Jesus. Yeah, Jesus, my homeboy. Love to sit and have dinner with Jesus. Just, you know. Stephen King. I've been reading his stuff since I was 10 years old. He's my favorite writer. I've read almost everything he's ever written, if not everything. I'd love to sit down to dinner with Stephen King. Arnold, of course. He's Arnold. My late father passed away in '86 when I was 16. So, you know, I'd love a chance to sit down for a bit under any circumstance and be able to speak to him again and tell him what's been going on with me and, you know, all that. So, of course, my late father. Last one's going to seem odd to some of you. Ed Warren, who was, him and his wife Lorraine pioneered the field of paranormal research. The movie The Conjuring 2 were based on real cases of theirs. I read a book of Ed's called The Demonologist, where he talked about a bunch of real life cases he had worked on. And I just think the guy was incredible, fearless. He dealt with forces that most human beings don't even believe in. If they believe in, they just would be way too terrified, and rightfully so, to ever confront. And I just think Ed Warren was a really cool guy. I'd love to sit down and talk to Ed, but he's been dead for 10 or 15 years now. If you could bang one celebrity, who would it be? Well, that's easy. Lady Gaga. I've seen all her videos. If you ever watched American Horror Story Hotel, you know exactly why I'd feel that way. Lady Gaga is just the sexiest thing out there. You know, I wouldn't say some porn star or something. Yeah, they're just filthy. I'm sorry. Anyway, most important lesson you learned for life. I learned this from a lot of self-help books, and this is something I have to work on every day. I'm not saying I've mastered this by any means, but it's to stop being a hater, to stop being jealous of other people, to appreciate what you have instead of always feeling bad or griping about what you don't have, to take responsibility for your own life instead of blaming other people, other forces, other institutions for, you know, your situation, where you are in life. You know, if you're not where you want to be in life, it's on you, and you gotta take charge of your own life, because no one else is going to do it for you. And like I said, these are things I have to constantly try to reinforce to myself, because I'm always sliding into negativity and jealousy and negative emotions. It's a daily, constant battle, every waking hour, pretty much. Best training advice I ever got: Kent Keane, who was one of Arnold's training partners, and he worked the front desk at Gold's Venice for a very long time. He had seen me compete at one of the Muscle Beach shows. I did a few of those, and my back thickness was very lacking. So he told me, think of your hands as hooks, just transferring resistance to your lats, and just changing the way I thought about doing all my pulling movements. That really made a difference. And my back's still not as good as I'd like it to be, but it's way, way better than it was back then, I'll tell you that. Most embarrassing gym moment. You know, there's been a lot of times when I probably had bad gas or something, or dropped a weight real noisy, but the one thing that was really embarrassing was way back in 1991. I was at Gold's Venice, and I was, 21 years old, and never seen all the pros in real life, and Gold's was very crowded, especially when I would go there like around 6 o'clock at night. It usually. I was sharing a bench, working on a flat bench with Steve Brisbois, who was a Canadian guy. I want to say he was about 5'2", 150, 160. Tremendous shape, symmetry, proportions, balance, and he would place well on all in the shows. Open, there was nothing except open. He went to the Olympia a few times at at 5'2", 150, whatever he was. Anyway, so I'm working in with him, and I was pretty strong, but on that day I was being stupid and trying to show off, doing skull crushers, and I believe I went to, it was either a 45 and a 25 on each side or two 45s. It was too much for me. Whatever it was too heavy for me to really get the form right. But anyway, I also need to explain at the time I had a mullet. Short hair in the back, long curly hair in the back, which went about a third of the way down my back. It was pretty freaking long. So I finished the set, slammed the bar back down behind me on the bench. At least it didn't fall on the floor. Sat up real quick, and I instantly felt the mullet ripped right off. And Brisbois was just horrified, sitting there with his eyes bugged out, like, bro, dude, are you okay? I tried to play it off. I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. But I was like, oh, it hurt. It was more embarrassing than anything else. It wasn't, I wasn't bleeding out of the scalp or anything, but it was pretty embarrassing. I think that's going to wrap it up for this one. I'm going to try to keep these under 20 minutes for sure. But keep the questions coming. I enjoy doing these. I hope you guys enjoy listening to them. Talk to you later.